today we're going to really focus on the H series robot, but we'll kind of get into a few overviews of the robot, of other robots that we have to offer. And so one thing I would like to say is we are joined from ONExia with Greg Selke. So appreciate you joining with us. Matter of fact, I was out at your facility, it was probably like 2-3 weeks ago, for a review on a robot. So got a chance to see your operations. Really nice to see. Great team to be around. So congratulations on that. And
thank you, Mike.
Yeah. So we'll kind of get into things, but like I said, I'm going to kind of get into kind of a brief overview, and then there's a few things we can kind of touch on and kind of talk about the palletizing and your experiences with the robot. So as Stephanie mentioned, so we will be, so feel free to ask questions as we go through, and we can either, as time permits, we can answer them at the end, or we can, you can email them out to us and we can address those. So one of the things we'll also be doing is we'll probably hold these, you can check our website as far as, how often we'll be doing these webinars, but I'm sure we'll be doing them on a more timely basis. So it depends on the topic. So feel free to also mention comments, things that you'd like to see being discussed. So I'm going to get going and get started here. So just kind of a quick background on the Doosan. So many people think Doosan, new company. Yeah, they are relatively new. So basically started in 2015 and first sold the robot in 2018. But we like to say kind of you could say small company in a sense with Doosan, but we have a big parent. So we do have, we're backed, by a $15 billion corporation. We do own Bobcat. So we have won many awards. We most recently, you can see the CES award for Innovation Award. So that was really nice. That was with our with the Nina. It was a camera robot. So pretty interesting. You can kind of take a look at our website. You can see some different things that we do with our robots. So here is, you're going to see the robot lineup. So just kind of quickly addressing the different robots that we have. So we have the M series, the A series, and the H series. So within our M, we call those our masterpiece, the kind of the mighty robot, kind of a nice lineup there. The A series, more of the economical robot. So you can get that robot with a force sensor or without. And then, of course, you have the H series robot that we'll be getting into here today. So we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. One of the things I will mention, too, when we're looking at the robots, something that when you look at the naming convention, so for example, if we look at, say, the H 2017, so you have the H, which is the series of robots, and the next number is, say, the 20, and that's, say, your 20 kilogram payload, and then the last, say, digits are for your reach. So 17, you basically have 1700 millimeters of reach. So kind of a nice way to, when you're looking at the robots, getting a feel for, what am I getting into when I'm choosing a robot? Kind of a good little cheat sheet on the naming convention there. So here you'll see kind of the lineup when it comes to the reach and the different payloads. So really, I want to say that today, one of the applications that ONExia has utilized is the H 2017. So you'll kind of see that one kind of falls in line with the M series, the M, 6, say basically, say 6 kilograms, but the same reach. So with our H series, H20, definitely the heavier duty payload on that. So the other thing with the H series, so this robot does have 6 torque sensors. So when it comes to the H and the M, they both have the 6 torque sensors. So you're getting, full compliance, force control, and you're getting, a high precision, collaborative robot when you're dealing with 6 torque sensors. So it's great feedback as well when you're working with the robot, especially a collaborative robot, to have the 6 torque sensors. This slide here is, I kind of really wanted to focus on the fact that, it's, you got a heavy payload robot with its H series. And what you're kind of seeing in the slide here is that, the robot weighs about 165 pounds, so not too heavy. And you can also even put it on an AGV AMR system. So these, even though it's a heavier payload robot, you can also, put those with AGV. So really flexible when it comes to, a lot of times you'll see the smaller collaborative robots on an AGV type of system, but certainly with this robot, you can do that. So something to keep in mind. We're not really going to focus on that today, but you can definitely see the flexibility with that. Here's just an overview of the reach on the 2017. So as we say, it's say 1,700 mils reach. So in this case, we show the diameter, say at 3,400, coming from the center of the robot out to the faceplate. So you're getting a full range of robot use there with the H2017. So great robot, great reach to with the heavy payload as well. So definitely a good feature to think about when you're looking at the robots. So in this case here, this picture I'm showing you the ONExia system. So like I started off, I was mentioning that I did go out to ONExia recently, and and we were talking about doing these webinars. And I thought it was really fantastic to see this system, very modular system. I like that you've got the pallet jack, so you can easily move this around, and Greg can talk more about that. So, one of the things that, looking at all the robots, so Greg, this is what I was going to talk to you about. So, with a lot of the robots that are out there in the field, there's quite a few to choose from. So, what made you kind of even consider choosing the Doosan? What kind of led you down that path?
Good question. The primary reason was a majority of the inquiries we were getting from customers were for palletizing payloads in the, let's say, 15 to 25 to 35 pound range. And so the Doosan H2017 really is the first robot of its kind to be able to handle those kinds of loads. So that was the initial driving factor. After we gained some experience with the robot, then its robustness, its ease of use, the weight of it, as you mentioned earlier, all those things have combined to make it very desirable.
Yeah, no, it is like I say, I was surprised when I first started working with these robots, the kind of the speed and acceleration that you can get with this robot. So yeah, no, so really the payload was really your first driving factor, right? It's just kind of getting into the Doosan robot. And actually I want to say that you guys, we're the first company that I'm aware of that received the H series robots. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I don't think we knew it at the time that we were pioneering, and sometimes pioneering is not the best experience, but the experience with this robot's been good from day one. So
that's great.
If we were the first, that's something to be proud of, I think, and it worked out very well.
Well, that's good to hear. I know there's definitely a lot of good success stories with it. And like I say, even with Doosan being kind of a newer name, you could say, I'm sure it was maybe a little gun shy to say, okay, who are these guys? What am I getting into, right? But probably give them a try, right? See how it worked out.
Right, we have good support from our local distributor, RG Group, and that helped with our confidence early on, and has worked out nicely.
That's great. Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, so we do have, say, different partners, and it's great to hear that you have that good relationship with those guys. That is something that we're working on here. So we're kind of building the team here in the U.S. So we have an office in Texas, not quite complete yet, but we're basically we're building up this team here in the U.S. to give further support, and also support the RG Group and those to help you guys even more so. So one of the things that how long have you been utilizing the Doosan? How long ago was that?
I think just I kind of lose track of time, but I think it basically last year, 2021, it's when we shipped our first what we call Palletize HD, which is the unit with the Doosan robot. So it was sometime, I think, mid last year, roughly.
Okay. So the unit, when we look at that, is that a standard application? So in this case, you do have, like, say, the riser on that. Is that something that you do with all of your applications?
We do. The Palletized HD is very much a standard product now. We've made it extremely universal so that our software, you're able to go in very simply and put in what size box you're going to palletize, what size your pallets are. You can drag and drop for the pallet configuration, arrange where you want labels shown, all of the normal things that are requirements for putting boxes on a pallet. All of that's contained in our software and makes it very universal. There's no programming. Customer never has to do any sort of programming. And so, yes, we have a lifter so that we can reach or build higher pallets, depending on the box size, over 100 inches high. And so it's very versatile, but also very standardized. The only thing that really becomes custom on it is the end effector, that is the part picking up the box. Those are designed or developed for the particular size of box or boxes. We can also do multiple picks, that is, pick up 2 or 3 boxes at a time, which increases our rate or throughput. So that becomes customized, but otherwise the rest of it's standard.
So, matter of fact, I've got so I do have a video here I'm gonna show that you guys shared. So maybe you can just kind of talk about what we're seeing here. So I know it is a Cobots and coffee, so don't get the wrong idea. We're not jumping into the 4 o'clock hour yet when you see this. But so, yeah, I mean, that's obviously a heavy box that you're dealing with there.
Right. Right. In fact, this is an example of where a customer asked us to do kind of a complete line. So it starts with taking the boxes at the beginning of their line, closing the tops and taping them, running them through the conveyor, and then picking them, putting them on the pallet. So we're able to provide the entire solution for the customer.
Okay. So you guys, I mean, obviously you guys are really, you're doing all your integration at your shop, and then you'll send off the final to the customer.
Right. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you have any applications where you've, say, built right on site as well?
Well, we first do things in our own shop. So if most of the palletizers are going out with some sort of conveyors feeding the boxes to them. And we also do some nesting of those boxes so that we're picking up from a known point. So all of that is done in our shop, and we run factory acceptance here. So both we and the customer know that it's set up properly, it's going to work well. And that makes installation at the final customer site go very quickly. It's not unusual, once everything's set up, to be operating within an hour because it is. Wow. It's very standardized and very simple to work with.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it did seem like a nice ease of use application. So I know here is where you are doing like a double pick.
Yep.
Application. So yeah, so
right.
Custom end effector to support that.
That's correct.
Yeah, so we'll just let this finish up there. So, one of the things, that I like to, consider when you are dealing with these type of, it's a 20 kilogram, but I always like to say you definitely want to, look at the payload on your robot. So, you might be max payload, say, for example, in this case, looking at the chart, I could be, say, offset about 100 mils in the Z with my payload, and maybe about 125 in either, say, X or Y when you're, say, coming out of your robot. So definitely something to keep in mind. You're doing your center of gravity studies when you're defining your end effector, to really, say, take advantage of the robot, say, speed and acceleration. Always keep in mind of your payload. So that is something that you really want to consider. I'm sure you guys have done that. I always like to remind people to keep that in mind, as because many people think, yeah, I've got a full, I can carry max payload, but if if my center of gravity is 300 mils offset, it's not going to do you a very good job.
Right, that's a calculation we do with our end effectors, and make efforts to keep everything as close to the faceplate as we can. It's worked out well.
Yeah. So, as far as some feedback goes, if you could, like, how many robots have you, like, say, set up for customers, and, like, roughly speaking?
I think with the Doosan robot, I think our total number is somewhere around 46 sales so far.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of those have shipped yet, but most of them have. They're in operation. We've been in operation since about the middle of last year with the Palletized HD.
Okay.
So pretty good results so far, I think.
And did you stick all with the H2017 series, or?
All of the everything we've done so far has been with the H2017, because of the combination payload and reach that we need, particularly for palletizing.
Okay. And so, I mean, as far as, like, you've said, you've had some, good success. So have they always met your expectations as far as a meeting rate? What type of, if you want to share, like, any kind of cycle times that you're typically seeing, or that it just maybe met some expectations on that?
Yeah, it's definitely met our expectations for a collaborative robot. In general, I think for our literature, we usually publish that we're very comfortable doing 6 picks a minute. In some cases, we've probably gone as much as 7 or 8. As your loads get a little bit heavier and you've got a little bit momentum as you're trying to move fast, in some cases that slows our rate down a little bit. And as I said earlier, for higher rate applications where the boxes are perhaps not as heavy, then we pick up 2 or 3 at a time, and that doubles or triples the throughput. So that's worked out very well.
Right. No, that's good. I know that that worked out quite well. So what? So 2 picks, or you're doing 3 picks now?
Yeah, actually, we're looking at some applications right now that we've quoted. I don't know that we've closed one of those. I think one of them has 4 picks. Because they're smaller boxes and we can hit their throughput that way.
Well, like I say, definitely keep in mind your payload charts. Like I say, that really is your best friend in all reality. Sometimes you can be, I'll say, borderline and maybe even a little bit over, but we can review that application and maybe we can still pass it. So definitely always kind of do that when for new customers that are entering into this market. I always kind of look at that.
Yep.
So one of the things I do want to kind of mention too, so this is kind of getting into, say, managing your robot. And so we have a feature, singularity avoidance, right? So it's kind of, say, set up by default. And this is kind of interesting. And I threw out this slide here and I said, okay, I really pulled this right from Dart Studio. And you'll see I'll have a slide showing some Dart Studio later on. But it's a great software to utilize. So Doosan offers Dart Studio as like an offline programming. And what I wanted to point out here is, and Greg, you can kind of jump in, but one of the things I do want to mention, so like I say, by default, you have singularity avoidance. But one of the things that I think many people might not realize is within singularity avoidance, by default, it's what we call DR avoid, right? So when you have singularity avoidance, say, turned on, it'll by default say be avoid, which will reduce your singularity. However, it'll say reduce your path accuracy. Okay, so that's kind of the DR avoid. It's going to reduce, it's going to eliminate the singularity, but it's going to say reduce your path accuracy. So you might kind of drift a little bit, right? But there's another variable, you can call it the DR variable velocity. What that'll do is that'll say reduce your TCP speed, however, but it will maintain your path accuracy. Okay, so that kind of just gives you a little bit of background about how our singularity avoidance works. And you can see the kind of some sample codes. You can just really, you're inserting this instruction to say either DR avoid. You could do a task stop. So if it did see a singularity in this case down here, it would actually stop and it would maybe post a 0 or a 1 that you can kind of track with some different utilities, or you can say utilize DR variable velocity. So there's one step further, is we have a feature called set palletizing mode. And I think this is really interesting. So I think this is an application that you could easily overlook because most people think, okay, I have singularity avoidance turned on, okay? But then we can say it's kind of a two-part instruction. So with set palletizing mode, in this example, what you can do is you have your set singularity, and what we do is we want to define that as set the variable velocity, right? So technically that would reduce your TCP speed. But now with this instruction, I can say do a set palletizing mode and say turn that on, and then when I'm palletizing, what that'll do is it'll keep my path tracking and my speed. So it's kind of a two-part scenario that I think is really unique with Doosan. So not only are we avoiding singularity, but then we can maintain our, our path accuracy and our speed and velocity. So not sure if, I'm sure you guys have probably gained interest in that. I've met your team out there, Catherine, she's outstanding, and she seems like she's really on top of this. But definitely maybe something that you probably didn't see right away as you were entering into your project.
Right, I think that's right. But these kinds of tools are really helpful, and because we're trying to achieve maximum performance for the customers, and so things like this in conjunction with the way that we're writing our software, and we're actually doing calculating and downloading each individual move, each pick and place. This helps us optimize what we're doing. So they've really been useful.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I definitely wanted to point that out to say anybody is kind of utilizing this. And then also, like I say, kind of think about taking advantage of your, the software, and to say, like I say, pull that up from, say, Dart Studio, as I mentioned. So within Dart Studio, there's like, say, a question mark, like kind of in the center of the programming, and then it'll kind of open up kind of like a manual, so it's really a good feature to kind of key in an application. One of the things I'll mention too is like, when you ship the robot, everybody gets the manual, right? And people never look at the manual. But I got to tell you, when you go through here, they've really documented all these instructions. And so maybe you don't want to look at the manual, but you do have an online manual with the Dart Studio. So definitely keep that in mind as you're building out your programs as well. So, collaborative robots. So we kind of want to talk some safety zones that we do offer. So within our robot, we do have, say, built-in safety zone. So it's all part of the software limit. So one of the things most people would probably do is you would set what you call a space limit. So you're kind of setting a boundary of your robot. So maybe the robot could reach 1700 millimeters, but maybe your work zone is only, say, 1200. So I can, say, work within a smaller space zone, if you will, with my space limit. You have these other features, say, crush prevention zone. So I like to think of that. That could be like a column. So if I did, say, hit that accidentally, it would stop the robot. So it can be like a zone that you're going to define. So it wouldn't say, slam into the column. It'll actually stop before it really does. Then you have these other features, say, sensitivity zone. So where you can actually adjust your collision sensitivity. And that's a feature within our robot where you can be, say, very sensitive, where, a very small amount of force will stop that robot, or you could have it at a higher value to, say, maybe manage the heavier payloads. But that you can always adjust that in your programming and set up these zones. Another feature is tool orientation, limit zone. So you can say maybe control, maybe say joint 5 downward. So it's not going to say if you have an operator near that work zone, so that maybe the end effector doesn't say go into his face. So you can kind of control your zones like that. And also you could set up like fencing, like a fence zone, like so the green that you're seeing there, kind of a collaborative zone. So I can say maybe have a faster speed zone as I'm going into one region compared to another. So many different safety zones that you can define within your robot. And you're not really limited by the shapes. Lots of shapes that you can utilize. So it's really something they've really taken advantage of in the software. So I'm sure you guys have, safety zones, or you have different, safe protections, but I will tell people that, you should always conduct like a risk assessment on your projects. And so, matter of fact, so this slide here, you are working with people. So we take a lot of pride when we say that the robot is, say, Cat 4 certified, which is like your highest safety rating. So I think that's great to be aware of with this robot. And matter of fact, I know when I was out at your facility, the customer wanted to kind of test the feedback, and he was actually really surprised. Basically hardly touched it, and the robot stopped. So definitely,
the safety has been a big issue with our customers overall, and so those safety capabilities have been really important. We use the fence. So for instance, our palletizer palletizes to one side on a pallet. When that pallet is complete, we continue then building the pallet on the other side. That first pallet's going to be removed generally by a human with either a forklift or some other means. So we have a fence so that we're going to protect that area. The robot's not going to go in there while that's being removed. And so we take a good advantage of those. Safety assessments, we've had multiple safety assessments done on the system, both in our shop and at the customer sites. And we've always passed, and that's a really important thing. And much of that's due to the safety that's built into this robot.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's good to hear the feedback on that, because you just don't want to assume it's a collaborative robot. So yeah, you bring in third party and do like a risk assessment or do a safety awareness, right?
Yeah, third party safety assessment. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good practice. I would always recommend everybody do that when you're building your systems. So the next thing we'll kind of get into is a little bit of hardware. So like I say, just kind of recap on the safety. Like I say, we have built-in safety zones, and we have, it's a very safe robot, but you always want to do a risk assessment when you're doing your system. So taking a look at the faceplate, one thing that's great about the H series, so we do offer, say, 6 inputs, 6 outputs on the robot. In the future, we'll also offer RS-485. You're going to see that a lot more on, different grippers that'll utilize, say, RS-485. So currently the A series on this slide, you do see the A series does have the RS-485, but like I said, we'll be supporting that on the M and H here soon. So within so like I say, with this robot, you do have 6 inputs, 6 outputs, which works out great. Here I want to kind of show the controller. So standard, we do support Ethernet IP, Profinet, Modbus. So that's all standard on the controller. You don't have to, say, purchase any extra software. Also on the board, you'll notice that we have, say, 16 inputs, 16 outputs that are supplied. One thing that's interesting about this too is it's actually part of our safety board. So you could, if you want to, you could actually use some of these to, connect, safety peripheral equipment, and you can, say, manage that because it is part of our safety board. Or you can just have all 16 inputs and outputs for your choosing, or you just go Ethernet IP, however you want to, say, communicate. So I know with your application, what do you guys use for I/O? Do you have like a certain choice, or is it depends on the customer?
We're set up to run Modbus and Ethernet IP, those two in particular, as well as the discrete I/O. So if we're communicating with peripheral devices, customers, PLCs, things like that, could be Modbus or Ethernet IP.
Okay. Okay. So you take advantage of them all.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I say, robot is equipped for that. So here's a kind of picture of your gripper. Say just a probably one of your single pick grippers. And so when I kind of look at that, obviously it's vacuum controlled. And is that something you manage, from our tool flange as far as like turning that off and on, or is that managed within your interface, your custom application?
Yeah, it's managed from the custom application. We utilize individual vacuum generators for each of those cups so that we get really good hold. Cardboard boxes vary dramatically. They are porous. Some are more porous than others. So it's important that we get a good grip. And so this technology has worked really well for us.
All right. So I know time is flying by and we don't want to, so I do want to kind of get into our, say, palletizing. So I will mention that, so on the Doosan controller, we do have the ability to say palletize on the robot. So this is a screen from the controller. So if you guys are using our robots, then you could say set up the robot. You would then go into the peripheral equipment and you'll see that here. And then you can say define a pallet. And the way it's set, you're kind of doing an array. You're kind of defining an array at say one level. So you'd have to say build your own pallet, if you will. But that is an option that Doosan does offer on a controller. Another option is with Dart Studio. And these are features that, the screen is, okay, so these are features that we can definitely get into in a further, webinar, but just kind of give you an idea. So you can say build a palletize within Dart Studio. So this is our offline programming simulation software. So you'll see with the robots kind of moving through its courses, on the left with the yellow it's going through the code. So the beauty of this is you build it. So in the lower right-hand corner, you're building your pallet within this pallet utility, and you can define your boxes, and you can kind of really say generate a program from this. So once you build it out, you have your pallet laid out, you can say do a generate, and then it'll generate this code. And then you could copy that into your robot. So you would then just have to insert your instructions to say pick from your conveyor. So that kind of gives you an idea with what you can do with Dart Studio. And like I say, I'll just kind of mention there's that question mark. So for those of you that are using Dart Studio, take advantage. That's your built-in manual. So definitely take advantage of that. So with ONExia, one of the things that's kind of unique is you guys have built your own, say, custom, application for palletizing. So I think that is really unique with what you guys are doing. And so I know I've got a video here, and maybe you can kind of walk us through what you're doing, but you'll see this is your module, right? So you got your module here. That's your interface. There's the teach pendant that's accessible. So let me just so this is actually going to kind of go through setting up the software. So Greg, if you just want to fill us in on what you guys are doing for palletizing.
Sure. So the key to our software is we try to make it so that we'll cover as many different box sizes and pallet configurations as possible. So we made it very, very universal and such that the customer doesn't do any programming. So there's multiple password protections to get into the software, depending on who's doing it. Everything is on the touchscreen, as you can see there. And by the way, these videos are all available at our website as well.
Okay.
So they're setting up individual box size. I just fill in the blanks, and then kind of hard to see from this video, but the screen, we bring up the boxes then, and with your finger you can just move them over to the pallet, indicate which way you want the label facing when it's on there, and just build up each layer. You can copy layers, you can mirror layers, and then save it as a recipe, and then call it up anytime in the future, and you run that same pallet again.
Okay. So when with your software, like, so you will ship out a customer, like, say, their boxes, can they easily add like new recipes, or do you have to kind of go on site, or how does that work for the software?
No, we usually do some initial training, and we can do that on site if they ask us to come for a startup, and we'll train their people. We can also do online training, but no, the whole idea was to make this so it's intuitive, and generally any operator on the floor can go over there and set up a new pallet just by entering that information. So we've tried to make it as simple as possible, and literally you can go from one palletizing setup to your next one in, I would say, 10 minutes, maybe at the most. It's very straightforward.
Okay, that's great to hear. I mean, you definitely want, in today's world, right, you want ease of use. That is it's kind of the name of the game. One of the things that we're trying to do with our robot is, you mount a gripper, you can say do plug and play, so you don't have to, like, say, configure it. So right. It sounds like you guys are doing that on your side.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. And really, once you've defined your parameters of that work cell, right, you've got your safe zones and whatever defined, now they can just add in a new recipe. So definitely makes life easy for the end users. So I know we're just wrapping up here, and we kind of just went a little bit over time. So a couple things I did want to ask you was, so obviously you've had, 40 plus robots out in the field, which is great. That's awesome to hear. Do you know if you have any customers running, say, 24/7, like, operations?
Sure, it varies a lot, but I'd say the average, most are running something more than one. There are a lot of companies out there running 12-hour shifts, so they may only have one, but it's a 12-hour shift. And then we have others that are running your more traditional 2 and 3 shifts. So some are definitely 24/7. And that's the beauty of the palletizer. And, part of our sales approach is to say, you can depend on it. It's handling heavy boxes. There are no ergonomic issues. It never goes home. It never calls in sick. It's just always there ready to work. And they absolutely work 24/7 and without problems.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's, I'll kind of throw it out there, and, obviously you have different conditions, but, any maintenance that you had to do on the robots, or
no,
they've been in the field? So
none. And the reliability, it's been very good so far.
Yeah, no, it's, the great thing with these robots, they do have harmonic drive, so really pretty, very reliable, right? Yep. With the systems. We do offer a 2-year warranty, with the robot. And as far as, one of the things that we also kind of mentioned is pretty much about 35,000 hours would be, if you have to do anything, that might be the maintenance, which is about, 4 years. But generally speaking, even, when you start digging into some feedback from, Korea, where they've maybe used them a little bit longer than they have here in the U.S., really, they don't really need any grease. They just perform. So basically, you've got a strong robot that's gonna, last a length, a very long time. So definitely good to hear that feedback from you guys, especially when you do so often, right? You always run into something. So many times I like to say, when you're dealing with a robotic system, usually the things that fail are not technically the robot. It's usually, something is hitting, maybe something that's getting stuck in the vacuum line, or the vacuum cup needs to be updated. Those are the small things that need a little bit of maintenance, right, to keep the system up and running.
Yeah, our experience has been vacuum cups will eventually wear out because there's friction with the boxes, but otherwise reliability has been superb.
Well, I know we're gonna we're definitely went a little bit over time here, and I hope everybody did enjoy our first webinar. Like I say, we will host these more often, and like I say, definitely provide some feedback as to different topics you want to see us address. We can definitely build those up and kind of suit your needs. Like I say, we're here to support the the North American region. So as we grow further, as ONExia has, they're being very successful with our robot. And yeah, don't forget we have other robots too. So I know you're having great success with the 2017, but definitely there's other robots to choose. I know that's your favorite. So don't be shy.
We have some great questions over here in the chat that I would love for you guys, if you have a moment. Again, apologies everyone, if you need to drop off, completely understand. You can always reach out to me or Dara with any additional questions, but we can get a couple of these answered pretty quickly, I think. So first question, does the palletizer control system consist solely of the robot CPU, or is there a PLC that controls everything? And is the cabinet DC powered or AC?
So in the case of our Palletized HD, the power input is 120 volt AC. You could literally plug it into the wall, and we need 80 psi air for our vacuum generation. We do have a separate PC that's a panel PC on the front that is our operator interface and does some of the trajectory calculations. There's also a safety PLC in our unit, which does the overall safety monitoring for the entire system. So we do have that in addition to the robot CPU.
Great. Next question, can the palletizer software handle pallets with slip sheets?
Yes.
Great. Can you interface with the simulator using the API and C programming?
We don't interface currently with any sort of a simulator, so no. We do offer an offline version of our software so that pallet configurations, box sizes, and things can be set up offline, and then that's easy to download with a thumb drive into our unit.
Next question, can the palletizer operate above head level? If yes, what is the safety measure to avoid hitting someone, and the sequence starts with someone on top of the pallet or inside the robot area?
Yes, generally most of our palletized HDs go out with safety scanners on the peripheral. There are 3 scanners that we set up. And so that's meant to provide the safety so that if someone were to be in that pallet area, we'll detect that. We set up zones so that if no one is around, everything's working just fine. And then if a human should come in closer, not within contact, but closer, we'll slow down to collaborative speeds. And then if somebody enters into an area where, with a head or something where there could be danger, then we'll stop. So we utilize the capabilities of the safety built into the robot as well as the external scanners to make sure that we're safe.
Excellent. One more question. The simulator question. Oh, I'm sorry. The simulator question was for the simulator in Dart Studio. My apologies. Can you interface with the simulator using the API and C programming?
Okay, that I am not aware of. So we'll probably have to follow up on that one. So with Dart Studio, you have full flexibility of, say, controlling the robot. So you could be, it's not just an offline programming tool, but you can be directly connected and, say, drive and manipulate the robot. But as far as external C, I'm not 100% sure on that. So we'll have to follow up on that one.
Okay, great. We'll get you a follow-up to that one. And then it looks like the last question, is the robot rated for 20 kilograms at full extension?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So if you think about it, I always like to say it's kind of like worst case scenario, right? It's really reaching out at the max reach at full capacity. Right. And then just to mention this as well is that, when, robot is, say, fully, at its max payload, the robot is still, say, compliant with, the force sensors and, stop detection. So just because it has a heavy payload doesn't mean it's going to, work differently. So, like I say, the key thing with really setting up your robot when it comes to mind is, you're managing different payloads, right? So when you just have your end effector, you'll have one payload, say payload schedule 1, and then you say pick up your heavy box. We have a place where we manage our the payload settings and center of gravity. So that's really the key aspect. Say managing the robot with the payload is you're defining the payload data. We do have a feature on the robot to automatically detect the payload and center of gravity. I like to always do a sanity check and verify that with, say my data from SolidWorks or CATIA, whatever you're designing in. So always verify that as well.
Great. All right. Well, that was it for the questions. So thank you, everybody. Oh, wait, just had one more pop up. Do you have a DC version cabinet for the AMR combo applications?
We do have, yes. There is a DC controller that is available that you could use for for AG, AGV AMRs, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we could follow up on some. There's some supporting data that we show with the robots that demonstrate that.
Great. Well, that looks like it's it for the Q&A. Everybody, thank you so much for sticking with us. Apologies that we are 16 minutes over, but we appreciate your time and your support so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. My name is Stephanie Calloway. The invite came from me. If you have any feedback, please let me know. We would love to hear back from you. And we appreciate so much you spending your afternoon or /morning or later afternoon with us. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you once again, Greg, for joining us. And look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.